Hi everyone, thank you for joining. Today's webinar is going to be on the SAT, particularly the um, reading section, just understanding the new digital format, understanding the adaptive learning format. We're just going to give it a few minutes for when anyone can join. We're just going to give it around 3 more minutes just to make sure that everyone's joining on time, and then we'll get started. Okay, I think we're going to get started shortly. First of all, thank you everyone for taking out the time to come to this meeting. I'll start by quickly introducing myself and the purpose of today's webinar. My name is May Rose. I'm a current third year medical student at Weill Cornell. I've been tutoring at Queller since 2016, so quite some time. And in that time, I've been supporting students in the college application process, whether that is for preparing for their standardized testing or resume prep, interview support, um, or essay writing and other things. So for today's session, we're going to be talking about the SAT, and I'm going to walk through the new format, what the new format sort of means overall, and additionally things to look out for in the reading section specifically. So let's talk about the general SAT format for starters. The SAT is composed of two sections, reading and writing, which is a combined section, and the math section. Um, the reading and writing section is 64 minutes, just over an hour. The math section is an hour and 10 minutes exactly. These sections are divided into two modules, and there's also a 10-minute break that they give you between the language arts section, which has the reading and writing, and the math section. Now, a change in sort of the SAT testing is this idea of adaptive testing. So before the SAT was a much longer exam, but with the support of technology and research, the exam is now an adapted module, which means that there is a diverse question pool with a variety of questions from easy to medium to hard. And based on how students are doing, they will see either easy, medium, or hard questions um, in the modules, and that will calculate their score. I'm going to be talking about this in a little bit more detail, and I also have like a video from the College Board to walk through this because I think this raises a lot of questions and anxiety for students. But let's just focus on the basics for now. So, like I said, 64 minutes for reading and writing, 70 minutes for math. And most of them are multiple choice, and some of the math requires you to like physically punch in the numbers, but this is the overall breakdown. Now, the digital adaptive testing, I'm first going to explain it in writing and then show a quick video on this, just because I think that, it is something that is important for students to understand. I don't think this changes anything for how students should prepare or their testing strategies, but I think it's just important to be aware of. So the idea is the assessments are now digital. Before they used to be Scantrons on paper. So my SAT that I took was on paper. My PSAT that I took was also on paper. Now all the testing is digital. What that means is um, the test responds to you. So if you are someone who's continuing to be, answering questions correctly, it's going to adapt the questions so that the questions are going to get a little bit harder for you. That's not going to disadvantage you because the scoring will account for the fact that you successfully completed harder questions and it's going to scale your exam appropriately. On the other hand, if you're someone who's, not performing well and you're, not doing well, the next set of questions will be easier for you. What that allows you to do, however, that will be graded and scaled differently, and not be graded as the same as someone who was performing well and saw harder questions. Now, what this does is this is able to calculate your score in a faster way because it's adapting the questions to your skill level. It's also actually giving you a better opportunity to showcase your skills rather than a student struggle through the whole exam and lose confidence or, not answer questions correctly or maybe even give up and just start guessing. When a student who's not performing well sees easier questions, it gives them an actual opportunity to show what they know or show any type of understanding. And it gives them more of a fair and equal opportunity. On the other hand, a student who already has a leg up and is performing well academically, when they continue to do well on harder sets of questions, they get rewarded for that by being scaled appropriately. So that's the main idea of the adaptive design. Like I said, it's faster, um, and it is allowing, the questions to respond to you. Um, the modules will be divided into easy, medium, hard. Depending on that, the future models will have a different modules will have different mixes of difficulties. Um, and this will calculate your score accordingly. It'll be scaled accordingly. And again, students will not be disadvantaged in any way because these questions are tailored to their abilities. And the score is going to calculate that accordingly. And the most important thing is doing your best, answering every single question. And again, just doing your due diligence to try to get every question correct. Now, this is just another, walkthrough of the adaptive questions. So, they're tailored to your difficulty levels, um, and will change future questions, um, based on their performances. Um, And, this type of methodology is, validated by national organizations, by research, etc. Um, and it does not cause a significant difference on compared to previous data from paper test scores. So this is a very well validated tool and technique. So I just want to sort of calm down a lot of students and parents' fear that this is going to harm their child or their applicant's application. And I just wanted to walk through a quick video just to summarize everything, just so that again everyone's familiar with the format, and then we can get to the logistics and the actual practice testing. So I'm just gonna play this video, and we will move from there.
Did you know that the digital SAT adapts to your performance? This makes it the shortest, easiest testing experience possible. You might have heard the term adaptive testing and wondered, what's that all about? How does it work? Don't worry, we're going to break it down for you. Let's dive in. First, what is adaptive testing? You've probably taken other digital adaptive tests in school. Unlike regular tests, you have lots of questions at all difficulty levels. Adaptive tests figure out your skill level as you answer. Then, they adjust the questions to match what you know, helping you show your strengths while saving you time. This means adaptive testing is quicker, accurate, and personalized. So, how does digital adaptive testing work? You might have taken an adaptive test that adjusts the difficulty of each question based on how you answered the previous question. But the digital SAT is different. It uses a method called multi-stage adaptive testing. With multi-stage adaptive testing, you answer sets of questions, and the difficulty of the next set depends on how you performed on the previous one. On the SAT, we call these sets of questions modules. The reading and writing section and math section are each divided into 2 equal-length modules. The first module in each section has a mix of easy, medium, and hard questions. Your performance in Module 1 will determine how difficult the questions are in Module 2, because the test is adapting to you. Your section score is based on your performance on all questions in both modules. Here are 3 benefits of multi-stage adaptive testing in the digital SAT. 1. The test is shorter, only 2 hours and 14 minutes, because it has fewer questions. And because it adapts to your performance, you won't waste time or energy on questions that feel way too easy or way too hard. 2. The test is easier to take. You can flag questions for review and change your answer in the first module before the second module adapts to your performance, so you'll feel more confident as you move forward. 3. Your test is unique and more secure, making it more fair. No 2 students have the exact same set of questions. You may be wondering if it's fair for the modules to adapt. The answer is yes. Here are 3 reasons why. 1. The first module contains questions with a mix of difficulty, so everyone sees the same number of questions that test the same broad areas of knowledge and skills. 2. The second module has questions aligned with your performance on Module 1. You'll be able to accurately show what you know and can do with fewer questions. 3. You can meet college and career readiness benchmarks regardless of how your test adapts, because your score for the entire section can still fall within a wide range. Remember, your section score is based on how well you did on all questions in both modules of the section. Your goal is to demonstrate what you know, so each question is important. There's no secret shortcut for adaptive testing. Just try your best on each question. Now that we've covered what multi-stage adaptive testing is and how it works, let's talk about the easy and free ways for you to become more familiar with the Adaptive Digital SAT. Download the Blue Book testing app to explore the test preview and take as many full-length adaptive practice tests as you'd like. Refresh and build your skills with ideas and practice questions from our partners at Khan Academy. Visit sat.org/practice for more information on how to practice and prepare. Learn more about the digital SAT and multi-stage adaptive testing at sat.org/adaptive.
So I just thought that would be helpful for people to just truly understand what the test format is like. Now I'm going to be walking through the Blue Book platform, and it's something that I recommend everyone get familiar with. It's something that I got familiar with today as well. So the Blue Book, like was mentioned in the video, is an application that's a testing platform. This requires certain features. Your device must be able to connect to Wi-Fi, your device must be charged. Um, you may also need a keyboard. Um, the Blue Book app is available through the App Store. So I'm actually going to start now sharing my entire screen. So it's available through the App Store. So I was able to find the Blue Book app and I downloaded it. And this is what the app looks like. So you need to enter in your information and you have the ability to do practice tests. Now, you also are able to do a test preview um, as well. So let's go through a test preview. So if we do a SAT preview, um, they're gonna give us a sense of how it looks and walk us through it. So this is the reading and writing section. It's gonna test your reading and writing skills. Multiple choice, choose one best answer. And then you just get to it. So now it just comes down to using the same strategies that you may have used on paper and pencil for the online format. So some students like to read the question first before they read the text of the essay or of the story or of the narration. Other students like to read the text first. Really depends on your preference, but I would recommend that students choose a strategy before actually getting into the test room and choose a strategy based on their practice exams and how they have practiced. For me, I've started to get into the habit of reading the question first, so I'll be doing that in today's session. But like I mentioned, it is student dependent. As long as you have decided on a strategy that you think works best for you beforehand and have practiced with that strategy beforehand. I think that's most important. Okay, so the question is, what choice completes the text with the most logical and precise word or phrase? Now let's look at a few options. Um, let's look at a few options or features here. So as you can see, when I hover over my cursor, I have the option to highlight in different colors. Again, thinking of terms of strategies, you might want to say, okay, yellow, might be for an important fact. Pink might be for a vocab word. Blue might be, a main idea. Again, the digital format is, unique in that this can really allow you to personalize your testing experience. So do what works best for you. There's also a underline feature. Maybe you want to say, okay, I'll underline things I'm confused about, or I will underline main ideas, or I'll underline a topic sentence. This obviously undoes your work, and this is a sticky note. So, something that I recommend the sticky notes for, it's not relevant for this question, um, but it will be relevant for larger passages, is when you have pieces of text in paragraphs, you may want to use the sticky note feature for that. So um, if we open the Blue Book app again, um, I need to sign in. If I open SAT Practice Test 6, I might want to use the sticky note, again, if I have a longer passage, I might want to use a sticky note to summarize paragraph 1. So what is the main idea? Paragraph 2, main idea. P3, main idea. Again, just do quick annotations just to get a sense of what the passage is talking about. That will help guide your train of thoughts. So now let's go through a few practice questions together. Which choice completes the text with the most logical and precise word or phrase? Okay, so now I answer it. Whether Carmen Lomas Garza is creating small painting illustrations or large public artworks, such as Bale, a copper cutout traditional Mexican dance. She is blank, direct experience, drawing from memories of her childhood in Texas or details of her current surroundings. Okay, so what is the best answer? So what I recommend for, especially EL, like English language arts or reading and writing section is process of elimination. Put in each choice in this blank box and see what makes the most sense. Upon doing so, choice D makes the most sense. It makes the most sense that whether she's creating small paintings or large artworks, she's inspired by her direct experience, drawing from memories of her childhood. So I will choose answer choice D. You can see that there's also the strike out feature, which is really helpful as you're going through the exam, just to keep you focused and in choosing the right answer. Okay. Again, which choice completes the text with the most logical and precise word or phrase? Um, you can also flag the question for review. So again, let's do this. Disproving the common misconception of native art as blank, painters whose work appears in the National Museum of the American Indian are a broad range of styles. Okay. There are artists working in the traditional style of their tribal communities, artists in the European modernist or American abstract, and artists blending tradition into something wholly new. Okay, the next sentence is talking about artists working in very diverse spheres. They're working in their traditional tribal communities, they're working in European sectors, they're working in American abstract arts, and some of them are just doing something completely new. So this first sentence is talking about what they're disproving. So, what are they disproving by being different? They're disproving that they're not all one group, right? They're disproving the fact that they're all the same or they're all have this traditional typical style because they've done so much in so many different groups. So again, process elimination, what makes the best choice? Homogeneous. Homogeneous means things being the same. When you have a homogeneous mixture, it's a mixture that is like one that is basically one. You can't separate it in different parts. When you have a homogeneous group of people, they are basically one unified group. So this is exactly what these people they're disproving. They're not one group. They're very unique and they've done different and unique and diverse types of work. So the best answer would be D. Again, which choice completes the text with the most logical and precise word or phrase? Recent measurements of the mass of the W boson, a subatomic particle, were notable not only for the mere fact that the particle's mass differed from expectations, but for the blank of that difference. It was 7 standard deviations higher than predicted. Okay, so 7 standard deviations sounds like a lot. What makes the most sense? D, scale. There was a difference, but what wasn't expected is the blank of that difference, the size or the magnitude or the scale of that difference. Implication doesn't make sense because there's no implication discussed. It's not discussed why it matters or what is the implication of the difference being 7 standard deviations. Cause and existence don't make sense. Okay. Again, same type of question. Birds sing to communicate with potentially great distances. For this reason, many researchers believe birds in densely vegetated habitats sing at lower frequencies than birds in comparatively sparse habitats, since dense vegetation tends to blank the distance. Okay, so they're saying if a bird is in a dense habitat, they're at lower frequencies. So that means it's advantageous for them to sing at that frequency so other birds can hear them. So that would mean that dense vegetation does something bad for the high frequency sounds because that's why they sing at lower frequencies. So, what makes the most sense here? B, diminish. Dense vegetation diminishes or lowers the distance that high frequency sounds can travel. That is why birds in dense areas sing at lower frequencies instead. Okay. Which choice best states the main purpose of the text? Really important to read the little excerpt. It just gives you some context about what you will be reading about. It can prime you onto, who the main character is, what the setting is, etc. And these things are important and helpful. Okay. Francie thought all the books in the world were in that library, and she had a plan about reading all the books in the world. She was reading a book a day in alphabetical order and not skipping the dry ones. She remembered the first author had been Abbott. She'd been reading the book a day for a long time. She was still in the bees. She read about bees and buffaloes, Bermuda vacations, and Byzantine architecture. For all her enthusiasm, she had to admit that some of the bees had been hard going. But Francie was a reader. Okay, again, process of elimination. A, to illustrate Francie's enjoyment of an unusual topic. Well, no, because there is no one topic focused on. The whole point of the passage is she's reading all the books in the library in alphabetical order. Some books are about bees, others about buffalo, etc. So there's not one unusual topic she's enjoying. B, tempting because it seems like she does prefer reading because that's what she's doing, but there are no other activities mentioned, so this is a distractor answer. C, to portray Francie's determination to meet a goal. Well, that seems like a pretty viable or potential answer choice because she's determined to read all the books in the world, and that's why she's reading a book a day in that library, starting from alphabetical order. So this works so far. D, to describe a book that Francie greatly admires. Again, this is a distractor answer. It seems like she does admire reading or she does admire books overall, but there is no one single book that is being discussed, so the best answer is C, and this can be eliminated. Okay, which choice best describes the function of the underlined portion? One caveat, I see a lot of students, being tempted to just read the underlined portion, answer the question, and move on with their lives. No, do not do that. The reason that they're giving you the whole passage is because that context is going to be important to understanding the underlined portion. So please, please, please read the whole text. Obviously, the question is asking you about the underlined portion, so focus on the underlined portion and make sure your answer is relevant to that, but do not skip over important context clues before or after the specific line that they want you to focus on. Let's read. The people of medieval Europe have traditionally been seen as uninterested in cleanliness and hygiene. Modern research shows this a myth. According to research historian Eleanor Janega, most medieval towns in Europe had at least one public bathhouse, which offered full baths and steam baths. Such amenities were available mainly to town dwellers. Regular bathing in rivers and streams or sponge baths at home were common practice. Okay, I read that out loud. Now I'm going to use the highlighting feature, this showing how I personally would approach this. Okay. People of medieval Europe had traditionally been seen as uninterested in cleanliness and hygiene, but modern research shows this is largely a myth. Why am I highlighting these parts of the sentence? I'm highlighting the contrast, right? The first sentence says, oh, it seems like they're not uninterested. Is that what the passage is about? No, the passage is proving the exact opposite, that this is a myth. So I'm highlighting the words but and this is largely a myth to make sure that contrast is clear and visible to me. According to historian Eleanor, most medieval towns in Europe had at least one public bathhouse which offered full immersion bath and steam baths. While such available amenities were available mainly to town dwellers, regular bathing in rivers, streams, or daily sponge baths were common practices. Okay, so why did I highlight the things that I highlighted and why did I use different colors? Honestly, I use different colors just because. But why did I highlight the rest of the stuff? Well, this is a detail, right? They have different types of bath, full immersion and also steam baths. This is also important detail that although these amenities existed, they were available to mainly town dwellers. However, these things in some shape or form were still common practices in people's houses, um, even though they may have looked slightly different for someone's house. So, all that being put together, what is this passage saying? And again, this might be, where you want to use a sticky note to just give you that 1 second quick summary for yourself before going to the question. So you can write what is the main idea of the passage. And again, this is supposed to be quick because remember, this is a time test. So I do not want students to be sitting here writing an essay in the sticky note section. But I think for me, sometimes it's helpful to just take a quick moment to summarize things in my own words before looking at the questions. So for me, I would say, Um, I would say something like people think Euro not clean, but is clean. Again, very quick, short, sweet, to the point, a personal, annotation of the text. That is why I abbreviated the word people. That's why I abbreviated instead of saying Europe, I just wrote Euro. That's why I wrote something very informal. Obviously, I would never write this in a formal essay, or I would never write this in like, something that needs to be handed in. But the point is, it's a quick 1 minute, not even 1 minute, like 20-second summary of what you just read and how you understand it before you even think about what the question they're asking. Now, which choice best describes the function of the underlined portion? Well, from our reading and understanding of it, they're talking about amenities and saying they're mainly available to town dwellers, but saying that, bathing also happened at people's homes. All right. So what makes the most sense? Again, cross-elimination. A, it asserts in medieval Europe, steam baths were more popular in rural areas than urban ones. There is no discussion of rural versus urban, so no. Describes the limitation of early historians' studies, no discussion of a historian. C, it concedes that not all people in Europe had public bathhouses. Okay, this is very plausible because the last sentence says most medieval towns had one public bathhouse. And then it says these amenities were mainly available to town dwellers. So someone who may not be part of the town couldn't use it, probably is what the sentence is implying. D explains why Janeja decided to study popularity of public bathhouses in medieval Europe. Again, does not make sense. Um, because we don't talk about the historian either. So that is sort of a distractor answer. Okay. Same question, same type of question. Main purpose, so main idea. So again, for this type of question, it might be really helpful to have that 1 second sticky summary before you even look at the answer choices, just to quickly, summarize for yourself what is the most helpful. Um, okay. When classical pianist Martha Argerich performs, it appears as the music is coming to her spontaneously. She's highly skilled technically, not because but because of how freely she plays and her willingness to take risks, she seems relaxed and natural. Her apparent ease, however, is due to a tremendous amount of preparation. Despite Arger's experience and virtuosity, she never takes for granted that she knows a piece of music. Instead, she approaches the music as encountering it for the first time and tries to understand it anew. So I would just summarize this, my 1 second summary. Um, Piano with talent and um efforts. So this paragraph is talking about what? This pianist who, seems to have a lot of talent, but also puts in a lot of effort into what she does. And that makes her, seem technically skilled. That also makes her seem relaxed and natural because her ease is because of how much effort or how much preparation she puts in. So again, this was my informal 1 second summary. Now let's see how that aligns with the main purpose of the text and the choices. And again, a reason that I think this is such a great strategy is because if your summary is not aligning with any of the choices, that means either you completely misinterpreted the text and you may have missed a very important line or a sentence or even a contrast word that completely changes the meaning of the text, or that means you are not understanding the choices. And so you need to do a deep dive into the text and the choices once again. So I think it's like a good checkpoint to make sure that you are, staying focused and being on top of it. Okay. A, provide details about how Argerich identifies which piece of music she will perform. This doesn't really make sense. It doesn't talk about a selection process that she has. It just says, whenever she does perform, it's like amazing to see because it's highly skilled, but also natural. B, to assert that Arga's performances look effortless because of how she prepares for them. Okay, well, this is definitely plausible because it says the first sentence says, when she's performing, it seems like it's just coming to her naturally and she plays freely and she takes risks. But at the same time, that is because she works so hard. Definitely plausible. C, discuss the kinds of music she feels comfortable encountering for the first time. Distract your answer because while this word encountering is used in the text, the word in the text is describing that she's encountering music that she's already seen. Sorry, the word encountering here is saying she's looking at music that she's performed already, but she looks at it as if she's done it for the first time. So she's not actually seeing something for the first time. She's just treating it like it because, and that's why she's putting in so much effort every single time she approaches a piece of music. D, describe the unique way that Argert approaches music she hasn't performed before. So, um, again, this doesn't make sense. It doesn't talk about new pieces of music. It just talks about the fact that every single piece she treats with, so much honor and so much hard work and so much like effort that it is as if it was new, but it's not. Best answer B. Okay, text one, text two. So again, because this is a different type of passage style and the questions will also reflect that, this just goes to show why that sticky note strategy was very helpful because you will have a sticky note for text one and you will have a sticky note for text two. And each of these sticky notes will show you how text one differs from text two. This is exactly why this type of strategy I really recommend. And again, I will read the question. Based on the text, how would the author of text two respond to the underlying claim in text one? All right, so this is a multi-part question. This question requires you to understand text one independently, to understand text two independently. It requires that you understand the relationship between text one and text two overall. And lastly, it requires that you understand the line that is highlighted and understand not only how it relates to text one, but really how it relates to text two. So we're gonna go through this. We're gonna go through this with some detail. Okay, text one. An excavation in Chuhite Cafe in central Mexico has upended the belief that approximately 30,000 years ago, a group known as the Clovis people were the first human inhabitants of North America. More than 200 crude stones were found embedded in a layer of earth up to 33,150 years old, revealing humans occupied the cave thousands of years before the Clovis people reached the continent. Okay. One thing that I really want to make note of here, I actually wasn't super sure what the word upended means. And I was a little bit nervous because I was like, oh, like, what if this really impacts my understanding of the passage. The word upended means to turn something entirely upside down or on its end. So it means like, to completely like turn the story around. Now, although I didn't know that word, what did I do? I moved on. And how did that benefit me? The second sentence made clear what the word upended means. Why? Because they say, humans occupied the cave way before the Clovis people did. So that means that this belief that the Clovis people were the first people in North America had to be like disrooted or had to be disrupted or disrooted or uprooted, and therefore upended means something similar. Like this belief is now like shattered. So that's text one. So my quick 1 second sticky note will be Clovis, not first people, right? That's what the text one is saying. Text two. Objects uncovered in Chuhai Cave are intriguing, but it's premature to characterize them as tools. The stone pieces are so roughly shaped, they may simply have fractured from rocks during natural activity. Moreover, their unearthing has thus far not been accompanied by discoveries of other signs of human activity or even traces of human DNA. Okay, so text two is saying basically not so fast. It's saying these are interesting objects, but we can't call them tools yet. That means we can't say these are things made by humans. And then the second sentence is saying, to further support this is the fact that there's no other signs of human activity, no, not even DNA traces. So text two is saying, whoa, 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 let's slow down here. Text one, on the other hand, is saying, this discovery has sort of changed the entire discussion of the Clovis people. Now, with this, we now go to the question, how would author of text two respond to this claim? So, based on what we know, let's go through the choices. A, suggesting it draws a plausible connection between two groups of people will need to be confirmed. This is definitely wrong. We're not drawing connections between two groups of people in text two at all. The text two author doesn't care about, the Clovis people versus the earliest people on Earth. The text two is just saying, I'm not even sure I believe this right now. Let's hold off. So they're not drawing any connection. B, the author of text two will say that this rests on an assumption about the stone pieces that's not sufficiently supported by evidence. So far, this makes sense, right? It's saying, we can't assume that these are tools, and there's not even more evidence about humans. C, by acknowledging it will most likely be proved correct when the stone pieces undergo more detailed analysis. So text two author says nothing about more research being done. Um, so that doesn't make sense. D, pointing out that it fails to account to evidence that the Clovis people were active on the continent. Again, text two, the author doesn't even talk about activity of humans or anything like that. So B is the best answer. Okay. Which choice best states the main idea? Many literary theorists distinguish between fabula, a narrative's content, and sujet, a narrative's arrangement and presentation of events. As you can see here, I use two distinct colors to highlight these terms because they're different terms, each with their own definition. Again, this is a very personal thing, and I'm just sort of highlighting my strategies in case it would help students here. In the film The Godfather, the fabula is the story of the Corleone family, and the Suzette is a presentation of the story as it alternates between two timelines in 1901 and 58. If you note, I'm keeping the color themes consistent, so Fabula is always blue, Suzette is always pink. But literary theorist Mikhail Bakhtin maintained that Fabula and Suzette are insufficient. So this is a completely new idea, so I'm highlighting in yellow. To completely describe narrative, he held that systematic categorizations of artistic phenomena discount the subtle way in which meaning is created by interaction between the artist, the work, and the audience. Okay, so my 1 second summary will be Fabula versus Suzette versus Bakhtin. Okay, so again, my 1 second summary, I'm saying, they talk about a fabula, they talk about Suzette, but then the last sentence says this theorist is saying these words are incomplete, and categorizing art in this way is like discounting, the uniqueness or the nuance of it. So these are all different trains of thoughts. All right. Which choice best states the main idea? All right. Literary theorist Mikhail Bakhtin argued there are important characteristics of narratives not fully encompassed by two concepts that other theorists have used to analyze narratives. This seems to suit really well what we just read, right? The two concepts are the fabula and the Suzette, but Bakhtin is saying, these are incomplete, and they're not really cohesive enough. B, literary theorist Bakhtin claimed meaning is not inherent in a narrative, but it's created when an audience encounters a narrative, so narratives are interpreted differently. I think this is a distracting answer. He does talk about, um, the interactions between artists, the work, and the audience, but he says that this sort of interaction is really important to art phenomena as a whole, and that these categorizations are discounting that uniqueness. Um, so I don't think B is correct. C, storytelling methods in Godfather are complicated, but they can be understood when two concepts are utilized. Doesn't make sense because Bakhtin's whole point is separate from this. D, narratives told out of chronological order are more difficult to understand. This is kind of like way out of scope. So A is the best answer. Okay. Which choice effectively uses data from the table to complete the statement? So as you can see, this is a different type of passage. This passage requires understanding of text and table. Anytime you read a table, important to obviously read the full title, read all the subheadings, etc. I recommend reading the text before you read the table as well. Okay. Passage of time is among the many obstacles faced by scientists pursuing de-extinction efforts. That is, efforts to use breeding or a mixture of cloning and genetic engineering to bring back extinct species. Okay, so what is the definition of de-extinction? Just a fancy way, scientific way to bring back extinct species. Specifically, researchers are concerned that the longer a species has been extinct, the less likely a suitable habitat exists. Among candidates of species for de-extinction, this problem would be especially concerning for who? Okay, well, just using, before even looking at the question, using common sense, they're saying if a species has been extinct for a long time, it's going to be pretty hard to bring them back because we don't even know if they have a suitable habitat. So who is, who's been extinct for the longest? All right, seems like um these people, the saber-toothed cat, 11,000 years before the present. Um, 11,000 years is way before 1907. So now I have an understanding of, how this relates to here, and I have an understanding of what's happening in this table. It's a partial list of candidate species for de-extinction. Um, there are people, and they've organized it into their common names, their scientific names, and when they became extinct. All right, which choice uses data from the table to complete the statement? Well, I did that already, and now I want to double check my work. So B makes the most sense, but I would recommend, for you to check your work because if you have an understanding of the passage, this should be relatively fast. Caribbean monk seal, which became extinct in 1952. So that's fact check. Caribbean monk seal, okay, correct scientific name, correct extinct date, but does that make sense? For the answer choice for this question, no, because they're not the oldest. Woolly mammoth, which became extinct several thousand years before the saber-toothed cat. Okay, let's fact check. Woolly mammoth here, good. Mammoth prignus, that also matches. 6,400 years. Well, is that correct? No, because 6,400 years is not as old as 11,000 years before. So this is factually incorrect. A, passenger pigeon. All right, again, fact checked, passenger pigeon. This is the correct species, 1914, and became extinct only a few years after the Hoya, which became extinct in 1907. So that is factually correct. It is factually correct that the passenger pigeon was extinct 7 years after the Hoya, but does that match what the question is saying? No, because you want to find the oldest species. So B makes the most sense. Okay. Which quote from the wallpaper most effectively illustrates this claim? Yellow Wallpaper 1892 short story. In the story, the narrator expresses mixed feelings about her surroundings. All right. The quote that most effectively shows this has to talk about mixed feelings. So let's see. D, color is repellent and revolting. Smoldering, unclean yellow. Strangely faded. This sounds negative overall. Repellent, revolting, unclean, all negative words. I'm getting quite fond of the big room, all but that hard wallpaper. Okay, this is kind of mixed feelings. She likes the room, but she like the wallpaper. B, by moonlight, the moon shines in all night when there's a moon. I wouldn't know the same paper. This doesn't really talk about feelings at all. A, wallpaper has a kind of sub pattern, particularly irritating. Again, not mixed feelings. C is the best answer. Okay. Once again, a table question. Which choice uses data um, from the table to complete the comparison? Again, same strategy. Read the text, understand, what makes the most sense here by then reading the entire table and understanding the title of the table in each of the columns, and then finally connecting it to the question that's being asked. So I'm just going to quickly scroll through the rest of the questions in the next 10 minutes just to make sure everyone has an overall understanding of the types of questions here. I think we've actually gone through most of them in the formats. Um, Now we're starting to go to the writing section. So these are like grammar conventions, understanding like when to use a colon versus the em dash versus the comma, or no comma. And then the questions are going to continue to be in that format. Create versus are creating versus have created versus creates, different verb forms. Again, a question mark versus a period. Using THEIR, there versus the place there, or THERE. Again, verb choice will be illuminating, illuminates, would illuminate, or illuminated. Using the possessive comma versus like the contraction. So phrases with comma at the end, that's different with phrases with the comma in between. Um, it's, which is singular versus there. Again, colon versus comma. This is transition words, using transitions to, properly move on from one idea to the next. This is another transition choice question. This is now taking a notes into like a summary. So it's kind of the opposite of what we did earlier. Before we read a paragraph and summarized it, now we're reading notes and creating a summary. Same type of question. They're giving notes. And again, for the purposes of this exam, obviously I was explaining the things, so it took longer, so time's up. But now we're on to module 2. So I'll just keep, making sure that everyone's familiar with the format. This is the vocab question. Again, another vocab question, which is the most logical, precise word. Logical, precise word. What describes the function of the underlying text? So again, what is the sentence serving in the passage? So in order to understand this, you need to understand what the whole passage is about and how this detail particularly is relevant. Overall structure. So again, this is kind of understanding, how we go from one idea to the next. So there's slightly different types of questions here. What choice describes what's happening in the text? This is like a main idea question. We've seen these already. Main idea, we've seen these already. This is a specific detail question. What was surprising to scientists studying the seismic activity? This just requires close reading. We've sort of done questions like these already. Data from the table, we've done questions like these already. Quotation from the bet illustrates this claim. We just did a question like this. Which finding, if true, would support the research hypothesis? So again, requires close reading, requires that you understand a specific detail hypothesis and then connect that to the choices. Process elimination is best. What choice completes the text? We did a lot of questions like this. Okay. Just want to make sure that we go through all the different types of questions so everyone's familiar with what they should study for or what resources they should use. Okay. We have 7 minutes, so I wanted to make sure that I give time to anyone to ask a question if they have one. Um, Otherwise, I'm just gonna spend maybe the last few minutes going over the different types of questions that we didn't get to, like these notes. Um, but yeah, I just wanted to make sure I check in with everyone because I know, um, there were a lot of things discussed. Okay. All right. Student wants to emphasize the aim of the research study. Which choice most effectively uses relevant information from the notes? Okay. This is the notes. This is a marine ecologist. She conducted a study of blue whales in this region. She wanted to know how ocean temperatures affect where the whales forage for krill. This is what she found. Okay. What's the aim? How does temperature affect where whales forage? Okay. Um, let's go through all of these. A, analyzing ocean temperature data, Torres found that blue whales forage farther offshore. No, this is not showing the aim, this is showing results. B, in her study, Torres sought to determine how ocean temperature affects where blue whales forage for krill in the region. This is a very good summary. It's summarizing what she wanted to know. It's summarizing who her, target population was and where they were located. Target population, blue whales, location, New Zealand. C, tourist study revealed that blue whales were attracted to offshore waters. Well, this is not revealing an aim, it's revealing a result. D, Torres studied blue whales in the region. This is too general, not talking about the aim. So this is the best answer. Okay, let's try to do a another type of question. Um, right, let's do a detailed question. According to the text, what was surprising to scientists studying the seismic activity data? All right. Recently, scientists looked at data collected by NASA to learn more about seismic activity on Mars, known as Marnquakes. Data shows Marnquakes all started from the same location. This discovery was surprising. Okay, so what is the surprising thing? That they all came from the same location. Why is this surprising? They expected Marsquake would originate from all over the planet because of the cooling of the planet's surface. Now scientists believe there could be areas of active magma flow that triggers the earthquake. Okay, so what was surprising to scientists studying the seismic activity data? Studying the seismic activity data. A, surface temperature had been rising. No. What was surprising? That they arrived from the same location. So that best matches with D. All the Mars quakes are from the same location. Okay. So in the last basically 2 or 3 minutes, just wanted to once again quickly summarize what we talked about today. We obviously have gone through a lot of practice SAT questions that you should be expected to see um, that you should expect to see on the SAT. These include main idea, detail, grammar, punctuation, transition words. We went over the format of the reading and writing, which is um, 64 questions, 64 minutes and 54 questions. We also went over the adaptive module technique, and we went over the Blue Book app and all the resources that students can use for practice testing and for getting familiar with the online platform. So, um, that is that. Um, any other questions before we wrap up the meeting in the next minute or two? I see. Okay, one comment, a thank you. I'm happy to have been of help, and I hope that this session was informative for everyone who attended. If there aren't any questions, then we can sign off for the night. I know it's 9 p.m. on a weeknight, so I really appreciate everyone for coming, and I do hope that, someone learned something out of today's session. This was helpful to everyone. Thank you so much for your time and for your attention, and for just being here. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your night.